Hello, my name is Randy Harrington, and I've got a story from the Kiamichi Mountains uh, that involves myself and my whole family, my wife and my two daughters. It was 2004, and we rented a cabin down there, and it involves a tree knocking incident that was very, very close. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my wife, I'm going to tell you my version. I'm going to show you where everything happened, and I'm going to tell you how I remember it, and then my daughters and wife is going to come in and tell their versions of what they remember about it. So first, let me show you the location. All right. Most of my videos so far around the Kiamichi area, I start with the basis of showing where my base camp is. Uh, so I mark my base camp down here in the lower right-hand corner just so that for reference, so that you know the relationship to these locations as it lays with my base camp area. So where that X is the base camp that you should be familiar with if you've watched any of my other videos. That small X just above it, that's the new camp that we were just at a couple of weeks ago. And we did have something happen there that I will be putting together on another video. But follow that line all the way back over there to that large circle in the upper left-hand corner. That is an area in 2004 that I took my wife and daughters on four-wheelers after dark to make a little campfire on the logging road and make s'mores. And we will get a little closer. All right, and this is directly over the top of that location. The X in Honobia is where our cabin was located, and the little bitty X out there to the west, that's where this incident took place. And now we will go to the even closer video. All right, and this yellow line here shows you the travel route that we took on our two ATVs to get there, to the foothills of that mountain on that logging road where this incident took place. So this is just to give you an overview. You can see Honobia there, and I'd say it was about a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles uh, back in on a logging road as it started to go back up the mountain. So we will now get a little bit closer. All right, now this is pulled in a little bit closer so you can see where that circle is. That would be where we had our little campfire and was making s'mores. And the arrow that I drew shows a holler that goes north to south from the mountains. It heads south from the mountains. Uh, and the knock that we heard was directly below us in that holler. So we will again get a little closer. All right, now here is the closest location that I have a picture to show where everything happened. You can see right there on the logging road that to the left it elevates uphill. To the right it goes straight down into that gully, into that holler. And so we were there after dark, had a campfire, had the ingredients to make s'mores. Uh, I believe we had a couple of chairs. I had two ATVs and they were each two-seaters. So they were ATVs made for two people. Uh, and so we were there on the two ATVs. We had a couple of chairs and a little campfire going because it takes time. I made the fire, so they're making s'mores. And what I wanted was I wanted them to be an attractant. Uh, so they were talking, giggling, just carrying on in conversations as I was hoping, just to for being a woman and two girls. I'd read all the stories about women and children being an attractant, so that's what I was hoping for. Did we really expect anything to happen? No, not necessarily. But that was the very beginnings of me researching, and you'll find that a year later, when we got the Ridgewalker video back at the base camp area, And if you look on some of my other videos, you'll see the Ridgewalker video. I think it was the video that I posted about communications and rock throwing being a communications. I think it was called Behaviors and Communication. But anyways, there's a little video in there called the Ridgewalker video. And when when you watch that video, you're going to hear that I was doing a tree knock. So the reason I was doing a tree knock then, when we got that video, is directly in relation to this happening right here with me doing a knock and then us having a return knock in such close proximity. But here's what happened. I was up the hill. You can see in the picture there where I was just up to the left at the edge of some trees with maybe my back to a tree looking down at the girls all at the campfire. And I told them I was going to do a tree knock. And so they all quieted down and was just kind of looking at me. And I remember I cleared a spot off the side of that tree so that there was no bark. And I had made a piece of wood, and I just swung back and pow, hit that tree. And then we're just silently listening. And it was just a matter of seconds. I'm going to say 3 to 5 seconds. Right below, you can see that X on the map, just below the logging road. It sounded like it was just that close. There was a loud tree knock right after I did mine, and it was just in the shadows of that holler. And there, I was looking at my wife, she was looking at me, and then I could see the panic. It went into complete panic mode. She jumped on the four-wheeler, and my oldest daughter jumped on behind her, and she was gone. She started it up and floored it out of there. And I may have been saying things at the time like, calm down, let's wait and see what happens. But she wasn't having it. She was already on the four-wheeler, starting it up and flooring it and gone. So I ran down there. I mean, I was probably 30 feet, 40 feet up. So I ran down there and I stomped on the fire and hopped on my four-wheeler. At that point, I mean, I was concerned with how close whatever did that knock was, but I was also concerned that my wife was driving recklessly. I mean, she was gone. So I had my youngest daughter hopped on with me, and I took off after her, and I didn't see her again until I hit the paved road. I had to make several turns to get out of these logging roads to the paved road. When I hit the paved road, she was way down the road, and I floored it. And it took me a while to catch up with her. And all the while, I'm hollering at her to slow down, because she was really, I was afraid that she was going to wreck, and with my daughter on the back, and she was in that kind of a panic mode. And I finally got up close to her, and we slowed it down and went and made it all the way back to the cabin, still pretty fast, but at least it wasn't full throttle. But we made it back to the cabin. And then when you get to where there's lights on, especially at the cabin where we had a front porch light on and stuff, it's almost like the anxiety level dropped. And we were on that front porch of that cabin talking about what happened, and going over it in our heads. And then I even mentioned, man, why, I tried to get you to stay, just to see how it unfolded. And but they weren't having any of that. I think my wife may have acknowledged, yeah, maybe we could have, but the difference between saying that you would under the porch light on the front porch of that cabin as opposed to being out on a dark logging road, two different atmospheres. So I knew that, just because I could get her to admit that maybe we should have stayed a minute longer to see what happened under the porch light was still an easier task than convincing her in the heat of the moment. But that's my version of what happened. I think something came down through that holler from probably the mountainside and was either working its way up or was observing us, because we'd been there for a while. But why it responded to my knock with a knock will always perplex me. Why did it feel like it needed to respond to my knock in such close proximity? He could see that it was me doing the knock. So it's not like he was confused. So yeah, so I wonder about that knock. But then again, a year later at the Ridgewalker video, you hear me making knocks during that video. So at that point, at the very beginnings of me doing these things, I was sold on doing knocks as an attractant. So that's my version of what went on here. And the next uh, will be one of my daughters coming in and telling their version of what they remember.
So, Dad just shared his version, and we had kind of talked earlier about our different perspectives a little bit. And I think what's most interesting about all of this, and I was thinking last night about what real memories I had. So when we started going out on these trips with Dad, I was like 13, 14, 15, and this was really rough time in my life. Going through puberty, and I developed like really bad cystic acne, and I had this haircut that I hated, and I gained weight, and I was so self-conscious, even with family. So a lot of what I remember on these trips were like my internal experiences of just feeling so uncomfortable in my body. um, I had like these hair extensions that I insisted on, like these clip-in hair extensions that I insisted on wearing, and like I would still wear shorts when we'd go to the lake to swim. I just was so uncomfortable. Um, so a lot of what I'm able to pay attention to was not my external environment. I was paying a lot more attention to how I felt inside. Um, so with this specific trip, I remember that we stayed in a cabin and we had explored for several days, like in the daytime, and there was like this like cul-de-sac type place, like parking lot type area that had two dumpsters, and this was like the town dump. And it went uphill this ridge, and then there was just forest, and we had done a lot of exploring through there, and there were not people around. I remember it felt very like the hills have eyes type, like there just weren't, you didn't see people. So it felt very isolating, and that's kind of eerie in and of itself. But this particular night, we'd rode the four-wheelers out, and I remember sitting in the camp chairs. Dad had a fire going, and my mom was like to my right, and Ashley was over here. And I remember Dad was like, I'm just gonna go up. And I think he had done like a whoop or a holler, because I remember getting like goosebumps. Like, because anytime I heard that noise, it just kind of like freaked me out a little bit, mostly because I was scared that I might hear something after that. Um, so I remember he had like gone off into the woods, and he did a knock. And I remember looking at my mom because she was like my safe person, still is my safe person. I remember looking at her, and it was like just behind her in the darkness, there was another loud crack. And I remember her like jumping up and running toward me because the four wheelers were behind me, and she like ran past me, and I just like turned and just like followed her, and we hopped on the four wheeler and bolted out of there. I don't remember the actually like leaving the campsite part, but I do like have memory of being on the straightaway, and she was going so fast. I remember my hair was just like straight back, and I was freezing, and I was like holding on to her so tight. And I remember Dad just being so far behind us. Like we were just going so fast, and I don't remember anything after that. I don't remember stopping. I don't remember when that night was over. Um, but there are so many other little parts that I do remember that were about like just like how bad I felt about myself. And, really again, thinking about, we notice and we pick up on what we pay attention to and where we put our energy. And I would be really curious to know now how my experience would be different given the work that I've done personally on my own traumas and anxieties, and I do a lot of resilience building techniques in my daily practice now. But what I think is also interesting is all the work I've done as a therapist. I have to remember details about stories and behaviors and pick up on people's cues, and I'm detail oriented, and I pay such close attention to these things because what you might see in movies is like they're taking notes as people are talking in a therapy session, and that's not really what it's like. I have to remember so that then later, when I'm not with the client, I can type up my notes. So I learned very quickly how to remember. Um, and there's so much about these trips that I don't remember, and I don't know that it's necessarily because I was traumatized. I think maybe that's part of it, that we know with stress and trauma that can impact how our memories are formed and how we can later recall those memories or not recall those memories. um, but yeah, I'm curious to see and hear how all of our different memories and perspectives come together in what we've picked up on and what parts were important enough for us to hold on to or pay attention to. So I appreciate you all listening and being a part of this process of us kind of re exploring um, these experiences we've had as a family.
Okay. All right. So my name is Ashley, and I'm going to tell you about my experience with what happened that night. So it was in 2004. So I was about 12 years old. So my memories of everything probably aren't that accurate, but it's just what I remember. We were out, in the woods, and we had the four wheelers, and we had two of them. So my sister and I were, one of us was with mom, one of us was with dad, and we took the four wheelers, and I just remember going back on these back roads, on these trails. I mean, we went pretty far into the forest, found a good spot, and I just remember the whole plan of that evening was to start a fire, make some s'mores. So I was super jazzed about all of that. Um, so we were out there, we started the fire, just having a good time hanging out. And I do remember my dad kind of walking up and a ways, and doing some tree knocks. And I don't think I paid very much attention to him. I was just hanging out and enjoying myself. And so um, then I do remember a tree knot was reciprocated. And I don't think at that point in time I really knew what it was or what was going on. I probably thought it was just dad doing it. And then him starting to come back to where we all were hanging out. And the most vivid thing I do remember was just the panic from my mom, and that she just wanted to leave and wanted to get out of there. And so I do remember her hightailing it out of there, with a four wheeler, just going. Um, and I don't remember much after that. I don't know if I blocked it out of my memory. I don't know if I was really scared. I don't Thinking back, I don't feel like I was really scared because I don't think I really knew what was going on. But I just knew my mom and my sister were on the four wheeler, and they were just going, and they were way far ahead of us, and that I was with my dad. And that's really all I remember. Again, I don't. I'm sure at the time I was scared. I mean, seeing my mom being like, "Oh, we need to get out of here." But I don't know. I That's really what I remember in my memory of it all.
Hi, I'm Julie. I'm Randy's wife, and this is my recollection of the tree knocking event we had. Um, I don't have a lot of memory of a lot of details. We were down there on a family trip. We stayed in a cabin. We had the four-wheelers, so we'd been out riding four-wheelers, and we decided we were going to go up and do a campfire with s'mores up somewhere in the woods, which I wasn't super crazy about that idea, but we were going to try to make it fun. So we went up, we found a good dark spot and had a campfire and had s'mores, and the girls and I were just trying to talk and have fun. And Randy was back up behind us somewhere, and he had made a tree knock. And not long after that, we heard another knock, and that was completely enough for me. And my fight or flight mode took in, and I'm completely a flight person. And so I jumped on the four wheeler, and our oldest daughter Chelsea jumped on the back, and we took off. And I was just wanted to get back. Like I just remember wanting to get back to the cabin where I felt safe. And she was telling me which way to go, which direction. And we finally kind of made it back down closer to the cabins, and Randy and Ashley finally came down a little bit later behind us, and we all sat around outside on the front porch and kind of talked about the whole situation. And back at the cabin, we were talking about it, and it's kind of like, oh well, maybe we should have stayed, but no, I was just way too scared. I just didn't want to find out what was up there, what was making noises. So that's really about all I remember is just the panic of it, just wanting to get out of there and get somewhere safe. And so that's it.